European leaders ahead of a meeting with President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. Live coverage here on C-SPAN throughout the afternoon of this meeting at the White House following the meetings that the president had with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday in Alaska. We're going to get your thoughts on this as well. But before we do that, Brad Bowman, what is President Putin up to after Friday's meeting?
I think that President Putin probably is very pleased with what he's seen thus far. And why do I say that? Well, if you look at Russian state media, they're in various degrees of celebratory fervor. They view Alaska as incredibly positive from a Kremlin perspective.
Okay, Brad, I'm going to jump in here because the door is opening here to the first European leader. Let's just see who it is here. It's the NATO Secretary General. He's arriving first at the White House. All right. Brad Bowman, is it important that the NATO Secretary General arrive first? What is his role here?
I think it's incredibly positive that he's the first to arrive for multiple reasons. One, because of the importance of NATO, as we were just discussing, and because of the Secretary General personally. He has developed an ability to work with Trump, to interact with Trump in a way that has been successful. Some have referenced him as like a Trump whisperer. He's learned how to work with President Trump. And so if he's the one that walks in first and kind of sets the tone, I think that's incredibly positive and probably deliberate and a smart move.
Let's go back to what you were saying on Putin, Brad Bowman, while we wait for this next European leader to arrive.
Yeah, so no, I think that if you look at Russian state media, which obviously is not known as independent actors, and so they're going to be saying things that they either are cleared with the Kremlin or they believe would be fine with the Kremlin, and they have been celebrating that they've accomplished the things I warned about, frankly, on Friday, they being the Russians, that they have delayed consequences for Russia, that consequences that President Trump threatened, but most of which have not been implemented, that they're on the verge of maybe getting acceptance for territory that they've stolen from Ukraine, and maybe getting more than they've been able to get on the battlefield via diplomacy, particularly in Donetsk, which would be very significant because the Ukrainians have built up very significant defenses in the parts of Donetsk, the oblast, that the Russian forces have not been able to take. They haven't been able to take those and hold that. And so if they were able to get at the diplomatic table, that would be perceived, I think, correctly by the Kremlin as a major win.
All right, the second door is opening here. And we have the arrival of the European Commission President here, Ursula von der Leyen. And Brad Bowman, tell us about her role this morning and what has she been saying about the U.S. responsibility here and how far the U.S. should go or be concerned about going with when it comes to Russia.
I think her presence is important because, you don't have every European country represented here. Of course not. You just have some of the leading countries. But, this is a problem for all of Europe. So as she comes with her title and her role, then to some degree or another, she can speak for all of Europe and of her member states in some capacity. Now, every nation state has different interests and different priorities here. You have countries like Hungary, for example, that have taken a very, very different approach than other countries. But I think her presence is really important. It provides additional diplomatic clout. So you can really think of the NATO Secretary General as representing the military power. And you see her representing really the political diplomatic power. And I think it's very positive that those two are there. And I think they arrived in exactly the right order.
And they're being greeted, by the way, by Monica Crowley, who's the chief of protocol for the White House, not being greeted by President Trump. Brad Bowman, is this sort of the normal or the traditional way for any White House that you have the chief of protocol out there on the carpet to greet these leaders?
Normally I would want to see the president greeting both of these individuals, given their position and their stature. But this is not a normal day at the White House, right? When you look at what's at stake, here, and you look at the quantity of dignitaries, this is not a normal day. So, you know, if we deviate from the norms here, I'm not going to get particularly upset or excited about that. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. You know, the best laid plans often collide with reality, and you just do the best you can. But you know, I think the public meetings, the public statements are going to be really, really important. And what's happening behind closed door in terms of who's greeting who, who's handshaking, I think that's less important.
All right, I'm going to weave in Peter here, who's been waiting. He's in North Conway, New Hampshire, an independent caller. Peter, we're keeping our eyes here on this live shot right outside the White House for more European leaders to arrive. But go ahead and give us your thoughts here real quickly, because I see another car pulling up. Peter?
Hi, Greta. I hope I can do this quickly. I think what's missing in this conversation is the historical context, and that is that the Swedish territory were acquired in the next what happened in the great over 270 years ago.
Peter, I apologize. I know you hung on the line there for a while, but we cannot hear you. It's too difficult. This is Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, arriving next. Again, being greeted by the Chief of Protocol for the White House, Monica Crowley. He will then make his way into the White House, where all the European leaders are expected then to gather behind closed doors and wait for the Ukrainian President, Mr. Zelensky, to arrive, which should be around 1 p.m. Eastern Time.